This is the Bottom Line Sports Show with Gerald Brown and Rick Mahorn.
Imagine you trade a Chet Holmgren for a Giannis Antetokounmpo.
These guys are athletic as you know what, and you go like, oh my gosh, where's the fundamentals? Where's the pass first mentality? That's not in the league anymore.
And now here's your host, Gerald Brown and Rick Mahorn.
What's up, everybody? What's up? Great to be back on the air. I'm flying solo because I need to. Because as you can see, I didn't leave the garden. In fact, this is the only time I can get in because this is only a ticket I can afford. Or better yet, I agree to pay. It's unbelievable. But nevertheless, I'm happy to be here. And more than anything, I want to get right into this. I really, really want to get into this. I know so many things transpiring. Let's go back. And I really, first and foremost, as I always say, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate any and every support. And, you know, a lot of the shows and stuff, I just got to say this. And I know a lot of people don't like me to say this, but I'm just going to say it because Cedric Cornbread Maxwell has a saying, I should say, keeping it real. And that's all we have done. You know, myself, the Bottom Line Sports Show is keep it real. A lot of shows that are out there now, podcasts, they have a lot of bells and whistles, right? But at the end of the day, are they giving you something that you walk away with and say, oh, okay, I did that. Now, I'm not disrespecting anybody. I'm just going to keep it real. A lot of the times, bells and whistles and all that stuff, that's great. But if you don't have any content and anything outside of buffoonery, it don't make any sense. It don't make any sense. But nevertheless, it's always great to be back on. So I want to explain to people because I know a lot of people have been saying, you know, where's Rick Mahorn? Rick was, first of all, he was sick at one time. Then he's better. And finally broke down, took his wife on vacation. But also Rick is now back coaching in the Big Three. So Rick is going to definitely be back on. In fact, I have an announcement to make after a while. But I want to start off the show just saying support and follow me on Instagram at GBrownSports. Really just, again, always putting up different things and different interesting tidbits. But I want to get into this thing about last night's game. And this is, you know, something that I couldn't believe. And so one of the things that, you know, I always like to do is the show is the day after, right? And I changed it from the morning after. Some people told me, no, don't do that. You know, don't do that. I always like to go with the day after. And the reason being is in the moment, if we haven't learned anything from professional athletes who get in front of a microphone, sometimes they speak and they speak off emotions and then come back and have to apologize. And I thought what was very unique about yesterday's game, it was something that, you know, the narrative obviously was the officiating. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to clear my throat, drink a little water, and clear this and say this carefully. If you are a avid diehard Knicks fan, if you're a Knicks fan that is not a Knicks fan that just popped up for these playoffs of the NBA Finals and bought your apparel and stuff, you are a fan from day one, A1 since day one. I'm talking to you. Don't be hoodwinked and bamboozled. Don't be misled to believe that the reason why the Knicks lost last night's game was due to the officiating. You are absolutely wrong. And you're better than that. If you're a true Knicks fan, you're better than that. Just like the Knicks fans, well, I don't even call those Knicks fans, the people that's wearing Knicks jerseys that's going out in the streets attacking other citizens and other individuals based upon the uniforms or the jerseys they have. I mean, that's not a Knicks fan. That's not a sports fan. That's the ignorant individual that's taking advantage of an opportunity to try to blend in and really be a coward and really want to try to go ahead and cause harm. So I'm not speaking to those people. I'm speaking to the diehard Knicks fans. The reason being is, listen, yesterday's game did not come down to the officiating. Yesterday's game came down to lack of execution on the offensive side. And also, too, we can take a number of things. You know, Jalen Brunson's been struggling. He's really, really been struggling. But not blame him. Defensively, a lot of the adjustments and stuff that the Knicks were making on the defensive side in games 1 and 2, they didn't make them. And the biggest thing that we should take away from this is understanding the biggest challenge for a team, a home team, is all the other ancillary parts that go with being at home. Think about it this way. We witnessed a team in the San Antonio Spurs lose 2 games at home. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the New York Knicks. But we understand when you're in that building, the magnitude of the game, the NBA Finals, it is nobody else is playing unless you're in the WNBA. I don't understand why they do that. But no other NBA team is playing. Everybody's focused on this game, and it's being watched around the world. There's ticket requests. There's family members. So many different things in a routine. Whereas if you're on the road, you're able to lock in. Now, I've asked Rick this a while ago, and I've often asked a lot of guys, when you are in a space, is it easier to lock in and concentrate on the road than it is at home? And last night, what we witnessed is a Knicks team that it's been 20 some odd years that you had a home game in Madison Square, NBA Finals home game in Madison Square Garden. All you heard was the tickets. You had the president there. So it added to already the nerves and just obviously just the discord that was on the court in terms of execution. All you have to do is go back and look at that first 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, the 3 minutes of the game. You had egregious turnovers by the Knicks. You had things that had transpired in that game where it just wasn't the Knicks and they're sharp and executing. You know, their sharpness wasn't there in the beginning of the game. They played from a deficit. Now, that combined with the fact is guys were trying to do more than they really needed to. And that would be ultimately right there what led to the Knicks being able not to finish and not to win this game. Because even when they had the lead, they still played as if they were down. And if you want to go a step further, in the first 3 games of these NBA Finals, the Knicks have been down by 8 or more at the end of the first quarter. So they've always played from a deficit in these finals. Now, the anomaly with this is that, yes, they won the 2 games. So, yeah, you can overlook certain things. Yes, Jalen Brunson hasn't shot the ball well. But things like that, along with the refereeing, the officiating, is taken away from the San Antonio Spurs, right? That is taken away from the San Antonio Spurs. Let's give them credit, because what they did was they basically ramped up their defense on the perimeter. They made things very difficult, throwing multiple bodies at Jalen Brunson. And Stephon Castle, I don't know if you realize, he's 6'6", and obviously a former football player in high school. But this is a guy that's his physicality is welcoming. He is sitting back with the Jalen Brunson and the physicality Brunson was able to demonstrate against guards in the Cavs series, against guards in the Atlanta Hawks series, all of those different things where he was able to win his battle, his individual matchup. And when you look at this, it's understanding that the Spurs tighten up their defense. That's number one. Number two, let's be clear. The Spurs and Victor Wembanyama did something that obviously he didn't do in the first two games. He decided to stay away from that perimeter. He didn't live out on that perimeter. Yes, he took a few threes here and there, but Victor Wembanyama played like a 7'4" big man in that game 3. Anything that he wanted, it was around the basket. And by him making that little subtle adjustment to now go inside the paint, that really caused a big adjustment by the Knicks, which they didn't make. But more importantly, the San Antonio Spurs started to look for Wembanyama when he's around that plate, paint. All you have to do is throw it up. Anything around the basket, he's getting. Right? That's undeniable. So he wasn't operating from the perimeter as much as he had done in the first two games. And what essentially the old saying, or you say this in the basketball coaching realm, he worked inside out. So once he had established himself inside and was getting those baskets, he started to float out and started to be able to hit shots on the perimeter. And that is the thing that Victor Wembanyama remembered, how tall he was, and also understanding that he is a big man. He is not a wing and playing out on the wing. He is a big man. And those little subtle adjustments by him, along with the defensive side, by Castle, by Vassell, by Keldon Johnson, by Dylan Harper, was significant. And in the midst of all of that, let's be clear, the Knicks only lost by a couple of possessions. So the execution was there. And then you got to also throw in the fact is that De'Aaron Fox, who's been struggling with the ankle injury, he had big shots down the stretch. It was ironic that he became the guy that was kind of the pseudo closer for the San Antonio Spurs. So I'm not looking at that and just saying that it's the officiating. On one hand, we want the officials to make sure we allow these guys to go out and they allow those guys to go out and play NBA Finals playoff basketball. But at the same time, we can't be crying about a whistle. Oh, yeah, that there was a little subtle things. I agree with the fact is that there were some missed calls by, Victor Wembanyama. But if you go back and if you watch the game and reflect on it, a majority of the calls that the refs blew that whistle, really, you go back and look on the monitor. Karl-Anthony Towns holding. It was certain things they got right when Mitchell Robinson was pushed in the back on the 3-point play, on the 3-point shot attempt. That was they got that. I'll tell you this, one thing that I don't agree with and I really despise, I don't understand why a team is penalized if you get a challenge right? And like the Knicks used their last challenge and all of a sudden now they had no more. I just don't understand that. I would really believe that, again, the more you go, the longer you go, you have that one. And the more you get it correct, you just continue to hold on to that one. So it really just, it just really just hurts, right? And it's just bad. But I think at the end of the day, you got to look at the fact is that one thing we're learning about this Knicks team, it's not just a one-man show, right? You look at the fact is that Jalen Brunson has been struggling. Well, let's tip our hat to the defense that the Spurs are playing, right? Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Hi, Leah Polanco. Hi, Leah. What's up, Adrian? Definitely. What's up? What's up? Achilles, all it. Ethan, all it. Kevin, what's up? What's up, y'all? People on Facebook, check me out. Leah, what's going on? Adrian Polanco, Leah Polanco, Achilles, Kevin, what's going on? So getting this back to that, I think it takes away from the fact is what the San Antonio Spurs defense has done. And they're making it difficult for Jalen Brunson. Now, the adjustment will be by, Mike Brown is now, can you assert Karl Anthony Towns back into that sort of facilitator role and allow him to be kind of that facilitator? And I think also, too, last night, we didn't see a lot of guys moving, right? The Spurs locked down the perimeter, but it just seemed apparent that when we saw those backdoor cuts, the cuts to the basket, that wasn't apparent there. And it just seemed like over and over, you had guys taking hero shots. And I mean by that in a respectful way. You had a guy like, Landry Shamet. A couple of times he's trying to do too much. But that's the magnitude of being in the Garden. You turn around, you're seeing so many different stars. And we already knew that how much it cost to get in there, you had to be somebody to be in there. So it was just really a who's who. And that was my biggest concern about the Knicks coming home with a 2-0 lead. The fan base is all amped up. They're really, really excited. It became something where a lot of people, were anticipating, just everything. It was going to be a sweep. I thought it'd probably be a sweep, but you got to relax. If I borrow the line from, of Aaron Rodgers in football, RELAX, relax. And that's easier said than done. They played very tight. And I think throughout the course of the game, they was looking for those moments on offense to get it going. But at the end of the day, they just couldn't get the stops, right? They just couldn't get the stops. And I know Mike Stepp was talking about Bridges and stuff like that. Really didn't. He had two more points than he did. Yeah, I think a lot of these guys really just didn't get a chance to get into a rhythm and a groove. And the moment was significant. Think about this. You're talking about a Knicks franchise that we all know hasn't won a championship in 53 years. And on top of that, they are 2 wins away from that. So the momentum, all the things that are building up. And I would say this in a nutshell. Think of it this way. We get more watch parties, right? There are going to be more people having watch parties. It's just going to be great. You're going to have a game. We're going to have a game 5 on Saturday. So I imagine a lot of it's going to be good for business. It wasn't going to be easy, right? I mean, I think that clearly what we witnessed with the Spurs is kind of maybe in some regards what we kind of witnessed with the Knicks last night. Of that moment and being in a space where everything, I mean, I heard, from people that were there was saying that the Garden was so electric at the start, and the energy that that's demonstrated and put out, you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall. Do I think the Knicks could still win this series? Absolutely. But I think clearly this is something that is not something that you can't fix, right? The final score indicates that the fact is that, look, they're right there. And they'll be the first ones to say that they didn't play well. They didn't play well. They didn't execute. Mike Brown said it. They didn't execute. He lost by 4 points, 115, 111. That's all. That's a whole thing where, if anything, you're right there. Now, the biggest thing I'll say also, too, a lot of people saw that Mike Brown had some question about the officiating. Well, I think that was more or less entertainment, right? It's entertainment. And what I mean by that here on the Bottom Line Sports Show is the fact is that you got to be able to use the media. And when I say you, I'm talking about coaches. Coaches, a lot of the times, will use the media to set up certain things and speak to his team and rally them, right? Knowing the fact is that, yeah, you want the whistle to be in your favor. But they'll go back and watch the film if they haven't done so already. They'll know they didn't play that well. And Mike Brown said that. But I don't believe that this game was won and lost. And I do believe this game was not won or lost based upon the officiating. And people need to stop that. Were there some bad calls? Yeah, absolutely. Now, people are saying, oh, the fix, they did this, they wanted this because they want this series to go long and expected. Well, yes. Let's be clear. This is entertainment. This is show business, right? The NBA, now I'm not saying it did anything egregious. The ref, they tried to fix the game. No, I'm not saying that at all. Let's go back and understand how the Knicks played. And understanding that from the business side of basketball, sweeps are no good. Why? Because just think of it this way. You own Disney. You've given a ton of money. You contributed a treasure trove of money to the NBA. And how does Disney, ABC, ESPN make their money back? They sell advertising. Ratings are high, sky high. They sell advertising. So the Knicks are going to make their money off of tickets, merchandise, popcorn, concessions, all that stuff. James Dolan made some money. He's made a ton of money. And I'm not mad at him because I don't count another man's money. But if you look at the landscape of things, how does TV make their money back? How does the networks make their money back? Well, the biggest thing they do is they sell advertising time. So that where we hear about the Super Bowl, the commercials and all that stuff and the amount of money that's paid for those commercials, well, they do the same thing when you have a NBA finals that's very, very competitive. And now, if you have a sweep, well, that's bad business. Because ultimately, you have a space where if you have the more games, the more advertising. When you have a game 7, that really, really stands out because now everything is basically on the table. And your ratings are through the roof, which translating people wanting to buy ad space during that time. So, all this stuff, I'll be the first one to say, the extender and all this other stuff, the sweeps hurt the game. It hurts. Now, am I saying that, was it egregious? No. There was calls on both sides, and then they got them right when they needed to. But that right there and saying the league wants it, the league would love for this series to go at least 5, 6. Well, it's going to go 5. They would love for it to go 7. Can you imagine on the positive side as a fan, we get basketball 7 more. We get up at we're at 3 now. We're at 2-1-3. So we're at game 4. We'll get 3 more games essentially of this type of atmosphere where the games are coming down the stretch, so competitive to ultimately for one team to be crowned the champion. And imagine, yes, it will be a lot for Knicks fans. I understand. It would be a lot for Knicks fans to go through that. But at the end of the day, it's good business. It's good business. And the biggest thing also, too, is understanding, the business side of it. They're making money, right? The Spurs owner got a use of that arena, and you get another opportunity to have basketball there. Same thing, like Madison Square Garden is used for other dates outside of basketball and hockey, right? So, yeah, that's not a problem. But if you're able to get this in there, and guess what? The ticket prices are going to be the same, if not higher, right? And all of this factored in. But I just want people to realize 2 things. Number 1, don't blame the referees. Number 2, sweeps are not good for the game itself. And on the flip side of that, we could get a really, really nice setup and a nice matchup. So I want to make sure that more than anything, I'm back on tomorrow. Big fella's supposed to be here. Rick Mahorn's supposed to be here. But tomorrow, doing a pregame show precisely at 7 o'clock, and I'm going back to the Knicks theme. Former Knick, three-point shooter, Trent Tucker will be in the building. We're going on at 7 p.m. We're off before the game starts. Take you right up there. So come back over here on the Bottom Line Sports Show and get your fix of the game and be talking with Trent Tucker, a three-point shooter that, again, Landry Shamet, Miles McBride. This was Trent Tucker. And Trent Tucker, which I'm very curious, I would say that he was the guy that was a part of that movement that, Rick Pitino had started with the so-called bomb squad, right? And they were ahead of their time. So definitely be talking to Trent Tucker. And, a lot of people are asking me, you getting a lot. Yeah, this is the Knicks time. Because ultimately, anybody that played in that Knick uniform over a consistent period of time where there was some struggles, right? They need to be acknowledged and they need to be a part of this, right? Now, granted, Patrick works for the Knicks and stuff. And, obviously we don't understand the whole situation about Charles Oakley, but there were guys that paid their dues. And unfortunately, you had forces of nature that would in front of them that prevented them from ever getting that opportunity. At one point, it was the Boston Celtics, right? At another point, it was the LA Lakers. Then you had Michael Jordan. Then you had, the Lakers again. So it's always going back to the players of yesteryear that ultimately, as a Knicks fan, I'm hoping that the Knicks win because these guys deserve to celebrate and be a part of that celebration and making sure that, again, they get their flowers. So Trent Tucker will be in the house tomorrow as we get you set for Game 4. And speaking of Game 4, I'm just going to lay this out right off the bat before I get on out of here, there's a movie coming out called Disclosure Day. And Disclosure Day, whatever, it's about aliens and stuff like that, scientific. But Disclosure Day is a name that resonates with me because Game 4 will be about that. We'll understand the magnitude of all the pressure. 53 years, fans are just clamoring, get it done. That's a lot from a mental and a physical standpoint. It's definitely a lot. And Disclosure Day will be Game 4. And the biggest thing is, who is it a must win for? Right? Like when we look at the San Antonio Spurs, I don't think it's a must win for them to sit back and say, okay, you're down 3-1. It's not the ideal space you want to be in, but you're going home. You're going home and you can make the adjustments. You've been there and done that. You don't want to be in that space, but if you happen to be in that space, it's not a bad thing. Whereas the Knicks, you can't afford to go down 2-2 because now all that has done is wiped away the first 2 victories you had. And now it becomes even now a pressure situation. Here we go again, right? That will be the narrative. Think about how the New York media were writing the Knicks off after they went down 2-1 to the Atlanta Hawks. Can you imagine? They come back and they lose this next Game 4. The pressure becomes even higher to even just get back and force a game, a Game 6. And then ultimately you got to go on the road and win a Game 7 in San Antonio. And the irony of this all is, wasn't that kind of similar what transpired in the Houston Rockets series where they had to go down to Houston and win? Not only back then, you had to win a Game 6 and Game 7 in Houston. So it's so much decades upon decades of pressure that's on the Knicks. And I believe the pressure is on the Knicks for Game 4. I'm not saying that they can't win, but there's a lot of pressure. And Disclosure Day will come tomorrow for the New York Knicks as well as San Antonio Spurs. That place is going to be electric and even more magnified. I hope they take the gates down now that the president's gone. I really hope that they do that, because again, the watch parties and you need that. Yeah, you definitely hope Scott Foster's refereeing, aka the extender. But the biggest thing is that it's going to be a lot of pressure. It's going to be a lot of pressure, and it remains to be seen. But hopefully, they will be able to take care of business. And don't forget, I'm back tomorrow. Rick Mahorn should be here, and obviously, we'll go ahead and go over the business of, breaking down exactly our thoughts and who should win that game, as well as talking to Trent Tucker as the pregame show before Game 4 will be on there. Before I get out of here, and I want to switch gears momentarily, and don't forget, make sure you subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel and stuff. I really want to get into this whole thing where, I really haven't spent that much time on, other sports, right? Yankees, they stumbling, bumbling, Aaron Judge is out. I haven't spent the time in that, because this is so unique. And before I move on to this, I want to just bring up a fact that if you watch the show, come back tomorrow, and I want you to ponder this. And I want you to actually go on and look it up. You can even go to ChatGPT. The history, if you go back from, let's say, 87, 88, and go back to the 90s, the recipe for teams to win a championship has always been, you got to make sure you get a guy in a trade that's productive, free agency, and you got to draft a guy. And when you have those three components, each one of those guys have to be at least in your top 3 leading scorers. And so I was looking at this, and I said, wow, what the New York Knicks are doing is an anomaly. It's kind of like Victor Wembanyama. They don't have a guy that they drafted that's in their top 3, the top 3 scorers. At the same time, the guys that they have obtained is all via trade as well as free agency. And it just goes to show that sometimes you can have an anomaly, right? Like we didn't know Michael Jordan was going to be Michael Jordan. He would have went first, right? He didn't go first. He went third. But you have exceptions to the rule. But history has told us that you have to have, because I believe it was another team that had the situation, and I think it might have been the Dallas Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry, but I think Jason Kidd was also drafted, even though he was traded away, left the Mavericks. He came back, but he was drafted by them. Also, I thought it was also too the Pistons when you had it was Chauncey Billups as well as Rip Hamilton, but Tayshaun Prince was also drafted. But just go back. It really is a formula. And I'm not an analytic guy and all that stuff, but just go back and you go through the course of the history, starting in the 90s, if you will, and just look. The element and this component right here, for you to have success, you got to draft a guy, right? You got to draft a guy that's going to be your top 3 scorer, at least one of your top 3 scorers. You got to trade for a guy. Free agency. Those are the components, how you build a team, a championship level team. Now, the Knicks are doing something totally different. And hey, I'm not mad at them. I'm not mad at them at all. But I just wanted to drop that tidbit on you. And then, as I was mentioning, this college football stuff. And as I said before, I haven't gotten into the college football stuff. I haven't gotten into all of that because college football reminds me of cold weather and all this stuff. But I couldn't help but notice that, I believe his name is Sorsby, young man who had a gambling problem, quarterback, was basically admitted to betting on games when he was at Indiana, his actual team. And he was basically, again, banned from participating. Well, he was able to go to court, and he was able to get an injunction. And based upon the timing of the injunction, the next hearing will take place in February. So now he's going to play this season. And yes, he's in therapy and all stuff. But I think it's so funny. And the irony of it all, why I'm bringing this up, is that the NCAA and college football knew what they were doing. When you started getting in the space of this gambling and the betting, the money is out there, right? And I'm just going to be honest. The money is out there. But let this be a lesson. Not all money is good money. And now you have a situation where you're going to have a young man playing for a team, and basically everything he does on that football field will be scrutinized, will be looked over and over and over again to make sure that it is legit. And that is going to be a stain on him. That honestly, if he has an opportunity to play in the NFL, I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't wish anything bad on the young man because, look, he's a college kid. We all make mistakes, humans. But I think the irony of this all is the court system ruled in his favor, gave him an injunction, and now he's able to play. So now when I look at these young men who were just recently banned in college basketball, I believe the school was Alabama State, admitted to betting on games and all this other stuff, they were permanently banned. Now, maybe they didn't go to court or just the way the schedule lays out, you play more games in basketball than you do in football. But this whole narrative here and the space that college sports is in, and now I wouldn't be surprised. And look, let me be honest with you. This is not the first nor the last time you could potentially have a situation like this. And it will be very interesting how much the eye, if you will be watching the Texas Tech Red Raiders football team this year. And, you know, it's just really one among other things that the NCAA has not gotten right at all. That about wraps it up. I'm out of here. I'm standing here. I got to go back because what I've been doing is I've been hiding in the bathroom stall. So I'm going to actually hide in the air conditioner panel so I could be able to hang out in here before the game tomorrow. And don't forget, Trent Tucker will be on the NBA we'll do the pregame show before the NBA finals. And as well as Trent Tucker will be on, Rick Mahorn. Thank you so much. Enjoy this evening. We're doing it all again tomorrow. Bottom Line Sports Show is out.